While drones were initially put to use in the defence industry, they now serve a wide range of consumer, commercial and government applications. The global drone market is projected to exceed $60 billion by 2025 in sectors from mining and goods transport right through to validating insurance claims. Dr. Catherine Ball, Associate Professor from the School of Engineering at ANU, joins us now to talk more about where drones of the future are heading. Dr. Ball, so good to have you with us today. Now, you are focused on drones' potential for a positive impact. Where is this research that you're doing leading you?
So it's been a game that I've been in now for a good 10 years already. And the way I cut my teeth was using Australian-made Aerosonde aircraft from Victoria. And we were flying hundreds of kilometres off the coast of Western Australia to do high-level photogrammetry for turtle nests. Now, no one would ever really have put defence drones and surveillance and turtles together, except when you take technologies and apply them where they've not been applied before, that's where the magic kind of happens. So if we open up an idea as to how we could use platform technologies for everything from pizza delivery through to getting food to people that are stuck on their roof in a flood, for example, to getting insulin pens to people quickly, to working with things like the Royal Flying Doctors Service and their medicine chest programs. And even some of the projects we're working on from the ANU at the moment involve everything from agricultural surveys looking at weeds and productivity, all the way through to cyclone prevention measures that you can put in place and resilience you can build around infrastructure. And then an exciting project I'm involved at the moment is working with the Western Yalangji Rangers, using drones and artificial intelligence to map and record areas of rock art and cultural heritage.
You know, it seems to me that this is almost unlimited. The positive impact is almost unlimited when it comes to drones. Does this balance off the potential negatives that we have when we look at the future of drones and the concerns, of course, over privacy and surveillance?
It's interesting because every country has very different rules around what we consider privacy and what we consider surveillance. So, for example, in Australia, I don't need permission to fly over somebody's land or someone's house, whereas in other parts of the Asia Pacific, I definitely do. There is this idea, though, when we talk about the value of the drone industry, I'd like to just extend that valuation out to the data that's actually being collected from these platform technologies, be they the ones that are flying, ones that are floating, ones that are swimming, ones that are crawling. And we look at the economy from having that kind of data to build a sort of a humanitarian metaverse or an opportunity to have real-time information. One of the things we have already signed up to as an industry are the fair data principles. And so these means that we'll be looking at data collection in an ethical way and working inside the law. There are some places where there is still the technology kind of leads the regulation, and that's where you have a grey area where you hope that industry best practice and other parts of regulation actually kick in. And in fact, the insurance industry has always been a pseudo-regulator for the drone industry. So people might be concerned about how operations might be taking place commercially, but just be mindful that they are controlled by a number of different types of legislation and regulation, not just air safety regulation. The next big thing to talk about, though, is noise. If you've ever heard a drone, they're a bit of a buzz. And so here in Australia, we do have some new noise regulations coming in that every commercial drone operator needs to be aware of around the noise that their drones might be making.
And then I'd imagine there's new technology that's following that, that's reducing the level of noise around drones, Catherine. Now, what are the limitations as we stand right now? Because I know that you've said publicly before that this doesn't include the technology.
Well, really, the limitations are really regulatory driven. So, I mean, one of the things that we've been trying to do, and we are doing, Australia is number one in the world for this, by the way. You know, we've had drone legislation now for 20 years. It came out underneath our model aircraft legislation in 2002. And so the idea that we can fly drones beyond line of sight, so we're looking at hundreds of kilometres. Why would you want to deliver something or take imagery of something that's so far away? Well, we know that the tyranny of distance is not only a hurdle, but it's also a massive opportunity for the drone industry. So there are pockets of excellence that are now scaling. The industry in the last 10 years has kind of done that usual dot-com boom type approach, where it's kind of mushroom clouded out into being everywhere and everything, and everyone's oversold and underdelivered in parts. And now it's actually going through that merger and acquisition phase. So it's very interesting to me to see people like Toyota buying drone companies, Boston Dynamics being bought by Hyundai, the car company, the fact that Airbus and Facebook are trialing high altitude pseudo-satellite drones in Western Australia to deliver Wi-Fi via laser beam, which sounds a bit Dr. Evil from an Austin Powers movie, but it's actually a genuine opportunity to provide connectivity after a cyclone might have knocked out your telecommunications towers. How do you get that immediate connectivity? Well, we've got drones that we can fly in with radio towers or comms equipment to be able to engage with that community. So you're right, the technology is really leading the regulation, but the regulation does stymie the applications because, of course, this is airspace we're talking about when we're talking about flying drones. This is where passenger planes are. This is where people are in aircraft. And one of the things we've learned from driverless vehicles is it's much safer if we just segregate that. So I think what we will find going forwards is we will have drone air corridors. There are already air corridors that have been created for humanitarian work in Africa. And corridors are really easily managed when you only have one operator. But what happens if we suddenly have 10 operators? How do we make sure that everyone's operating inside that air corridor? And how also do we make sure that air corridors are not only positioned over areas where people might not be so wealthy as other areas?
So how do you answer those kind of questions? I mean, you've just raised a number of questions. How do you answer them if indeed technology is leading regulation?
Best case practice and an industry that has a desire to do good. So as we move from the fourth industrial revolution to the fifth industrial revolution, you will find now a lot of our business models, particularly around the ESG investing space, will actually be looking to build purpose directly inside their profitability. And so I think if us as individuals are going to see drones flying around, we want to understand why they're flying. I mean, if there was a drone ambulance operating like they have developed out of Caltech, if we had drone ambulances rescuing people, I think the social license and the social contract around that is a much easier discussion than someone having their burritos and coffee delivered, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Yes, absolutely. So, Catherine, what does the future look like? If you looked into your crystal ball, what do our skies look like?
Well, if I was to go so far ahead as to go to the Paralympic and Olympic Games here in Brisbane, I would say we will have drone transport by that stage. We will probably be a place in the world that is the first to have drones actually moving people around. And I think that 10-year window is about enough time for our regulation and our technology to actually converge and be able to come up with something. I think the driverless vehicles, if you consider those to be sort of like drones, I know that Audi had a trial vehicle where you could actually fly in a drone attachment and put it on your roof and take off over the traffic jam in front of you. I think we've all experienced a traffic jam or two in our life that we'd quite like to have just flown over the top of. I see that becoming a reality to a certain extent. Having food and drink and things delivered, you forget something on Valentine's Day and have it sent to your loved one's office window. These things might be more like 15 years away. But the Olympics especially, the counter drones, I mean, if I was to use a bit of a term, the anti-drone drone is the new drone. So when we look at the big comm games and how they managed the drone incursions that they had at the comm games using the anti-drone technology like Drone Shield, which is on the stock exchange, and various other Australian companies that are coming out with anti-drone drones. So I think we'll have a more developed and more mature ecosystem in 10 years' time.
Catherine, wonderful to have you with us here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Catherine Ball with us there, right here on the APAC Network.